What's up, humans?
What? Who you talking to? I'm trying to get some gains.
So today we're talking about realistic expectations on your fitness journey. We're going to talk about fat loss, muscle growth, strength, and your overall appearance. One thing that I've noticed due to social media, due to Hollywood transformations, due to steroid use and abuse in the fitness industry as a whole, due to Photoshop, a plethora of factors, a lot of people simply do not have realistic expectations on their fitness journey. So if you want real expectations, the truth, not overly pessimistic,
Coach Greg, and today I'm going,
not overly optimistic, but just the reality, this is the video for you. Now let's start with fat loss. 3 things that I think people get wrong when it comes to fat loss: the rate of fat loss, the process itself, and the goal. So let's start with the rate. I would say a good rate is between half a kilo to 1 kilo per week. If you do something like keto, you're going to get a lot of weight loss in the first week, but it's not necessarily fat. Some of it is probably going to be fat, but a lot of it is just going to be body water. You are flushing out all of that water when you drop your carbs. Every gram of carbohydrate, every gram of glycogen that you store in your muscles, in your liver, etc., it binds to roughly 3 to 4 grams of water. So when you reduce your carbohydrate intake, you get a big drop in body water. And this could be 3, 4, 5, perhaps even 6 kilos of weight in the first week. This is not fat. And keto isn't any better when it comes to losing fat. It's just that you lose this water weight, and thus you get this surge of dopamine the first week. You're like, oh yeah, I'm losing so much weight. I'm going to be losing 5 kilos per week. I'm going to get to my goal in like 4 weeks. No, because there's only so much water you can lose. And once you lose that, the rate goes back down to roughly 0.5 to 1 kilos per week, as with any other diet. Ultimately, it's still about the calories. This, unfortunately, makes keto more attractive as a diet than it maybe should be. Can you imagine if it was the opposite? If the first week it made you gain 3, 4, 5 kilos, but the rate of weight loss was the same? How hard would it be to market and sell? Hey man, there's this diet. The first week, you can gain 3 to 4 to 5 kilos. But it's the same as any other diet. No. So for almost everyone, just target 0.5 to 1 kilo per week. That is going to be a very, very reasonable rate of weight loss. If a diet is promising in excess of 1 kilo per week, it is physically possible, but it's almost certainly not going to be very sustainable, and it won't be very enjoyable. I can promise you that. So I would say 1 kilo is sort of the upper threshold that you want to target. The higher your body fat percentage is, the faster you can lose weight, at least in theory. Because the more fat you have to lose, the more fat you can lose. You have more fat to just release fatty acids and just more energy, and so you can have a larger deficit. As you get leaner, you have less fat to lose, therefore you cannot lose fat as quickly without potentially losing muscle mass. So as you get leaner, your rate of fat loss will almost certainly have to slow down. This isn't a bad thing. It's expected and reasonable. And if you're a competitive bodybuilder, you want to go from 8% body fat down to 5% and get truly stage conditioned ready, that is completely different than someone who is 48% trying to go down to 45%. Just completely different states of physiological existence. Next would be the process. Now, dieting is one of those things where it is simple. You get in a caloric deficit, you stay in a caloric deficit, you lose body fat. However, it's not always the easiest thing in the world. And it's not just as simple as, just get in a caloric deficit. No, there are a lot of factors at play, and something like 90 or 95% of diets fail. So it's something that you should expect to be difficult. If a diet or a system or whatever is trying to sell you on the idea of this diet is so easy, so simple, like you'll never be hungry, it is almost certainly just marketing. Okay, if you want to make long-term changes, you're going to have to make changes to your diet, to your habits, to your lifestyle, to your sleep, to your stress, to a lot of factors that aren't just related to the foods you eat. Next up would be your goal. Now, this is something that I see all the time, and I've legit had client questionnaires where they were 40, 45% body fat, quite rotund, and they had a goal of 5 to 9% body fat. I am not even kidding. 5 to 9% body fat. Like way leaner than 99.99% of people should maintain. And they just don't have the expectation. They don't realize how absurdly lean even 9% body fat is, let alone 5% body fat. No one should maintain 5% body fat at all. It is not healthy whatsoever. And I would say the 2/3 rule is a good rule. So I just made this shit up. It's not even a rule. Might be a rule in the future, who knows? But you take your current body fat percentage and you multiply it by 2/3. So if you're 60% body fat, your goal should be at lowest 40% body fat. Okay? You can go from 60% to 40%, but don't have a goal of like 15%. That is years away. When you get to say you're 45% body fat, you can start thinking about 30% body fat. When you're 30% body fat, you can start thinking about 20% body fat. And when you're in that sort of 18 to 20% range, you can start saying, okay, well, I can maintain this. I feel good. I'm stable. Homeostasis is achieved. Now I am targeting, 12 or 13%. You get there, you maintain it for a while, you see if it's possible, you develop those good habits, etc. You solidify them over the course of many months, if not several years, and then you think, okay, well, I'll try for another 2/3. I'll go for 8% and see if I can get there and see if I can maintain it and see how it feels. Just a little bit.
Just for a second, just to see how it feels.
And you don't go from 60% to 8%. You should not even be thinking about that. That should not even be a long-term goal. Just prove to yourself that you can do 2/3.
Great talk.
So target 0.5 to 1 kilo per week, or roughly 1 to 2 pounds in total weight loss per week. Realize it won't be easy and will require some sacrifices on your part. Yeah, if it was easy, everyone would be lean and everyone would get to their goals, not 95% of people failing. And then utilize the handy-dandy 2/3 rule to give you some realistic expectations. Next up, we have muscle growth. Now, this is going to vary based on your training, your genetics, your diet, a lot of other factors. But the biggest factor is actually how far along you are in the process. If it's your first year and you've never trained with weights before, you can gain a lot more muscle than someone who has already been training for 2, 3, 4 years. And after that, things slow down considerably. For me, I would be thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to gain 2 kilos or around 4 pounds of muscle per year. That would be a fantastic result for me. For a beginner, if you gain 4 pounds of muscle in a year, that is a resounding failure. So your expectations depend on where you are in the process. In the first year, I would say around 15 pounds is reasonable. 10 pounds is below average, but if your genetics are below average or you don't fully commit to training, that's a decent result. And 10 pounds is a lot of muscle. Don't frown on 12 pounds. That's a pretty decent result, and it should be visible, especially if you are lean. 20 pounds is possible. I gained 13 kilos of weight my first 6 months of training. I went from 68 kilos to 81 kilos. And yes, there was some fat development as well, but it certainly was not overwhelming. I don't think I went above 20% body fat. I got a little bit thicker, but certainly I would say at least half of that, if not closer to 2/3, was actually muscle. So I would say to the average natural trainee, about 15 pounds or 7 to 8 kilos is a pretty decent expectation. Could be a little higher if you're lucky, could be a little bit lower if you're less than lucky, but don't focus too much on the numbers and don't overanalyze it. I would focus more on the process than the results. Going into your second, your third, your fourth year of training, things will slow down. And you should not expect to, attain and maintain this rate of muscle growth forever. It's just not going to happen. That's not really how the body works. It's a curve. So when people are like, oh, my newbie gains are over, well, there's no fixed time when your newbie gains are over, okay? And heck, if you train very poorly your first year, you might still have newbie gains that you can attain. And then again, past 5 or 6 years of fairly optimal training, you are looking at basically crumbs. You can obviously accelerate this with steroid use and abuse, and you can go far beyond your natural genetic potential. But if you stay natural, past 10 years of training, you are really just fighting for the extra grams of muscle tissue. And that's where you're looking at like half a kilo per year, a kilo per year, where things are almost not measurable, where the progress is so small, so slight, that you literally cannot see it. And this is part of the reason why it's so important to focus on the process, okay? Because if you're focused on the results, past a certain point, you can barely see the results. And so you really do have to take a process-focused approach. Otherwise, you're just not going to keep the motivation. And you can't even see progress. So you can't rely on that to keep you motivated. You have to love it. Next up, we have strength. So even more so than fat loss and a little bit more so than muscle growth, this is very, very much genetically determined. Everyone can improve, everyone can get better for sure, but you do see extreme outliers like you don't really see with fat loss or with muscle growth. You have guys who go into the gym their first time and they're just destroying 3 plates in the squat and deadlift, or even 4 plates. And, those are numbers that for some people, they take years and years of hard work to build up to. So some people, they are literally just built different. They have the frame, the structure, the leverages, the insertions to just destroy some heavy ass weight. And those are the kind of people that you see on social media. Because if they train hard, they are the ones who set world records and who get tons of followers and who get a ton of attention. But don't think for a second that they are normal or average. And the sad thing is, a lot of the times they say stuff like, oh yeah, I'm average, I just work harder. You're not average, okay? If you're bench pressing 4 plates naturally, that is not average, or even 3 plates. I would say that is well above average. And the majority of people are going to have a tough time getting to those numbers. So just because you see something on social media, don't think that it's average. And in fact, if you see something on social media, it's that much more likely that it is definitely far above average, just because social media selects the best. For an average person, I would say 2, 3, and 4 plates after a few years of training is very, very reasonable. Some people get it in their first few months of training, but again, that's not average. And if someone can do that after a few months of training, don't think for a second that they are average. And if they say they are average, they are either lying or they are just delusional. They are too close to themselves to realize how gifted they are. Next, 3, 4, 5 plates. I'll put the measurements up here, or at least the editor will, if he's feeling generous. He's usually not. Fucking dick. But those are very, very reasonable lifetime goals for most true naturals, okay? 3, 4, 5 plates for bench, squat, deadlift. When you go to 4, 5, 6 plates, that is excellent. That is really, really good, and you will stand out in almost every single gym. Maybe not on social media, especially if you're a bigger guy, but those are very, very respectable numbers, and honestly, you don't really need to go past that ever unless you want to be a competitive powerlifter. But again, it's important to manage your expectations. If you're watching Larry Wheels destroy 9 plates in the deadlift or something, or just rep out 7 or 8 plates like it's nothing, yeah, it's nothing to him, but don't think that that's normal or even close to average. It's not. Next up would be your overall appearance. Now, a lot of this is obviously going to be mediated by your muscle mass and your fat amount of mass. No one calls fat mass, only muscle mass. Why isn't it fat mass? Anyway, getting off tangent here. But there are some other things that determine how you look. First, your abs. Don't send me a picture of Ulysses and be like, hey coach, help me look like this. First, not natural. Second, look at those abs. That is literally 1 in a million or more. So don't think no matter how many drugs or dieting or anything you do, it's not actually going to be attainable. Genetics. Same thing for other muscle groups. It's going to look different for every single person, and don't send me a picture of someone's bicep and be like, hey, how do I look like this? Well, a lot of it is going to be genetics. But don't let this dissuade you from working out or lifting or trying to get better. If you are like, low teens in body fat percentage with a decent amount of muscle mass, you will look freaking incredible. For a man, of course. Women could add, 8 or 9 or 10% body fat. But if you work hard, it doesn't matter about your insertions unless you want to be literally a competitive bodybuilder. Plus, there are plenty of bodybuilders that have glaring flaws and are still professional bodybuilders. So don't think like because you don't have the perfect insertions in the biceps or whatever, you shouldn't work out. It doesn't actually matter very much. Waist size, frame size, overall proportions, again, these only really matter at the very, very highest level. Arnold had a thick waist. Not from the side, but from the front, yeah, definitely not the most structurally gifted. Good thing he didn't just give up, right? And this goes with a lot of top bodybuilders. You don't need the perfect proportions. No one has the perfect proportions, except for Steve Reeves. But apart from that, no one. Also realize that many, maybe not most, but possibly most Hollywood transformations, not natural. Okay, and even if they were, they are doing things and they have so much more pressure that it is probably different from your personal situation. They are being paid millions of dollars, and how they look is a big part of that. So they have a lot more motivation. They might have, personal trainers, everyone cooks for them, everything is set up in a perfect way, and then also possibly throw drugs on top of that, and you get a result that is not really realistic. Also realize that it's going to take time. It's going to take years, devoting a lot of time and energy and effort to the process. Not just the training, that's going to be several hours, if not many hours per week, but also you might need more sleep. You might need to do meal prep. You might need to educate yourself, okay? To educate yourself. Even if you have a coach, you still need to educate yourself on the lifting process. That can help a lot, but a coach doesn't replace learning on your own. And in fact, I encourage all of my clients to ask me as many questions as possible, because that is going to help your long-term results. A good coach just makes it possible to learn faster. It doesn't replace learning or make it possible for you to have to be not involved in the process. You still have to be involved in the process. Also realize that overall drug use is very common on social media especially, plus Photoshop. People just straight up Photoshop their pictures. Like they just completely tweak the hips or, tweak the waist, or then tweak the shoulders and tweak the arms, and suddenly it's literally a different picture. Okay, it looks similar maybe, but a few inches here and there can make a huge hey-oh. So I'm not saying you have to delete all social media, but just keep in mind at a very fundamental level, it's not reality. It is different. You are seeing just a very, very skewed view of reality. So if you want to have a long-term vision of your training, it might be best to take all of it with a grain of salt. All right, that's all for today. Like, share, subscribe, comment, drop some arguments for the algorithm, blah, 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 and I will see you in the next video. Peace.